Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Women Power Pittsburgh, a podcast where we share stories of women doing impactful things in the Pittsburgh area. Today, we are chatting with Harriet Riley, who is the Mobile Services Coordinator for the nonprofit organization Dress for Success. Harriet will tell us about the background of the organization, the work they do, and how it fits into the larger narrative for female empowerment. Harriet, thank you so much for joining us today. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
You've done a fantastic job of introducing me. I am a mobile service coordinator for Dress for Success. I've been in that role for just over 2 years now. And my job involves driving one of our mobile boutiques out in the community, running mobile events where women receive free clothing, and planning those with local nonprofits. So, yeah, it's a wonderful role, and I'm really glad to talk about it and everything that Dress for Success does.
Yes, thank you so much. And that's a perfect segue into, well, what exactly does Dress for Success do? Can you give us a background of the organization and kind of how it started, what you do now?
Yeah, absolutely. So Dress for Success was founded 26 years ago in Harlem, New York, with the goal of providing clothing to assist women in achieving economic independence. The Pittsburgh chapter has been running for 25 years. And Dress for Success is actually a global nonprofit. So we have 136 affiliates in 20 countries. And I think that speaks to the universal experience that women can have, whether it's entering into the workforce, getting a promotion. We all know about the gender pay gap. And then once you split that out to account for racial diversity and things like that, there's huge nuance in what the pay gap means. So I think we're helping meet a universal need, which is encouraging and supporting women in wherever they want to go in their careers, whether it's starting out, changing, or moving onwards and upwards.
Yeah, that sounds absolutely amazing. And truly, I think people underestimate just like how much the gender pay gap is. Like, I think we see a lot of like, oh, like it's so much better these days, like the feminist movement, like it worked. And like, obviously things are much better. But then when you look at the gender pay gap, when you see how women are still treated in the workforce, especially when they have children and things like that, like it becomes such a big problem that I feel like we tend to not necessarily ignore, but don't look at as much as we need to. So this organization is amazing.
Thank you. And I would agree that it's still a challenge, and it's a challenge that can feel very insurmountable, and particularly when you're just one person. So in Pittsburgh, we say we provide clothing, and that can be interview clothing, it can be scrubs, work site gear, casual clothing, anything that a woman needs to get where she wants to go. We can start right from the very basics. If a woman has lost her wardrobe or had to leave it for any reason, we can start there. If someone's going into a skilled trade, we can provide that. When we say connections, that's things like resume support, resources around food, housing, training and development. And we also run our own women-specific job fairs, a program called Employ Her, where women can get live resume support. We have people recruiting for companies. We provide childcare because that's a huge, huge issue. Women tend to have more caring responsibilities, which can place restrictions on them. And confidence. Confidence is such a big thing. I struggle with confidence. I think a lot of people struggle with confidence. And when we say that, it's not us giving women confidence. It's helping women find or rediscover that confidence that's innate with them, but may have been kind of knocked down or that they haven't even discovered sometimes. So it's about being supportive and kind and empowering, but very much helping women go where they want to.
Yeah, that's like so beautiful. It's amazing that people can have access to that community, especially when they're struggling to. And kind of that you touched on, like finding that confidence, I think is something that like women especially kind of struggle with. Like not everyone experiences it, but like because there's so many issues, so many people telling us that we can't do these things or historically just disadvantages, I think it becomes even more important to put that focus on. And clothing, I think, is such a huge aspect of that people kind of, again, don't recognize the way that they should. But like when I first heard about like the work that the organization did, I was like, the first thing I thought of is I do speech and debate. And it's like every time I show up to a tournament, like in a suit, like feeling my best self, like dressed the way I want to be, like it increases my confidence so much. I feel better able to step into that space. Obviously, that's such like a small instance of it, but like that confidence plays such a big role.
And it's super personal, right? It's very much in the same way as not one size fits all. Clothing and how it makes people feel is very
Yeah.
individual. So we try and provide a whole range of sizes and styles and options so that it's what what makes you feel the best. It doesn't have to be the traditional black suit kind of workwear that sometimes people think when you think dress for success, you automatically go there. But it's about what makes you as an individual feel your best. So that if you're walking into that interview room, you feel confident. And it's such a beautiful thing. I never thought I would find myself working in clothing in kind of any way. And some days I always joke with people that I struggle to dress myself some days. But it's so wonderful when you see someone try something on and it just clicks and they go, oh, okay. And you can see just that little spark of who they used to be or who they want to be. And it's not everything, but it's something. And it's that little step. And we can put a team around people with the extra support that we offer to help carry someone forward. It's a really, really, really beautiful thing.
Yeah. And obviously you sound incredibly passionate about this. This is like what you do, and it's amazing to hear about it. And you also said that you didn't expect to find yourself kind of working in this. So how did you get into it? What drew you to the organization?
So I was working somewhere else, and one of the mobile boutiques, I was working in supported housing for women who'd all left the domestic violence situations. And one of the mobile boutiques came to where I was working, and I spoke with Alex and saw what they were doing and saw the impact that it had on the women we were supporting, and just thought this is a fantastic organization. And I think it's the sort of organization I wish I'd been exposed to when I was younger. I was pretty clueless about everything. I had supportive parents, but no real direction. And I think of my mum's kind of story as well. She left the workforce to have me and never went back. And I think she would have wanted to. I don't think she had the resources, and I don't think she had friends or people around her to support her in doing that. Yeah. And I just thought, what a fantastic organization to be part of. If I could play a part in that in some way, that would be fantastic. And I think I just stalked them and watched the website. I was like, how can I get in here? And that was how I discovered Dress for Success and kind of made it my mission to get in here.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. And actually, like what you mentioned about like your mom and kind of being inspired by that, or seeing like what her story was like. And that like also makes me think about my mom, who's like been in the workforce her whole life, like constantly, even like when she had me, when she had my sister, like she was like always like, I'm going to go back. And I realized like she was strong for doing that. She experienced a lot of different hardship going back. Like there was like a lot of judgment from a lot of people, including some of her friends. But then like so many women don't get that kind of support around them to even be able to go back, either economically or like even just like that confidence to be like, of course you can go back. Like you're having the skills to do it. So it's like, I think, again, it's so important, and it's really lucky when people have that support around them. And it's amazing that Dress for Success provides that.
Yeah, we're very lucky to be able to do it as well, that people let us in. So.
Yeah. You kind of mentioned this a little bit before, but how does Dress for Success fit into like the larger like narrative and push for women's financial independence? Because you mentioned this is like a global organization, and you have like it in so many different places. How do you see that playing out in places that are not inside the US and like overall globally?
Oh man, I mean that's a huge question. And I was listening to something on the radio that concerned me the other day, that I think in 2023 the gender wage gap widened for the first time in a number of years. And looking back, whether that was just in the US, but I think that probably would track globally. And that was scary because, as a woman, as a feminist and being in this kind of space, we always hope it's forward progress.
Yeah.
And we have to do a lot of work to bring all women with us in that progress. Um, but if we're slipping back in that kind of at the kind of the base level, it's bound to be getting worse kind of in different areas of that. So I really think one of the ways that we can be helpful is encouraging women into also kind of siloed occupations as well. There's still a very big difference in what's considered a female occupation and male dominated spaces. And I think starting, particularly in Pittsburgh, to work with some of those kind of like whether it's tech or whether it's construction, to kind of to support women into those roles where there's great wages and there's great job progression and security. I think those are one of the things that we can help with. I mean, as an organization, very locally, we're quite well connected with those, and starting to branch out from just the clothing with the employ her and the job fairs, actually bringing women and those recruiters together that's a really powerful thing to go, look, these people have the skills you want, and these companies have, whether it's flexible working or the guarantee that you'll be at home. If you're, more women are starting to go into CDL driving. So the big truck driving.
Yeah.
And they're very well paid jobs, and a lot more places are having a guarantee that you'll be home rather than spending nights on the road. So a lot of people don't know that. So being able to make those connections locally, I think is very helpful. On a global scale, I want to say leading by example, but that doesn't sound like a very good answer. I don't know. These are the questions that my background is women's history and gender studies. I did a master's in that. So these are questions that I was asking 20 years ago. And they're still current questions. I have a lot of faith in the generation of women coming behind me. Hopefully in my generation's ability to support them and in some instances get out of the way.
Yeah.
Rather than blocking or the kind of tamping down on new ideas, being able to go, we've done some groundwork. What are your ideas? How we can't fix everything, and having greater conversations generationally and culturally, I think. I don't know if that's an answer.
No, that actually makes sense. And it's something I've heard about before, because on the podcast, we had a conversation with a woman. She has worked with like reproductive rights and those kinds of organizations. And she was also mentioning it's like knowing when to open the door for people to come in, but also knowing when to step back and actually let those people have a space to speak. Like she was like referring to like younger women or women of color, like marginalized communities. But like that kind of idea of, it's interesting that you both had that same idea of like, we are doing work, but we also need to know when to step back and like allow other people to do it. So it was,
we owe it to the younger women. I don't have a universal experience. I don't have all the answers. So, and in some ways with where I am and the level of privilege that I have, it's on me to be aware of when I need to get out of the way and make space in a conversation for someone else.
Yeah. And that's really amazing, because I think a lot of people don't realize that. Like they get so focused on like, okay, this is my narrative. How am I going to push this thing forward? And that was kind of like even back in like the suffragette movement way back. It's like they kind of fail to see the other perspective. So I'm glad, like, it's amazing that we have people who are like, okay, we can know when to do the work and also when to step back and let other people take their space as well.
And I would also say, I worry about using the phrase step back, because there is still work to do on those edges. I get worried that at some point as a feminist, you just go, oh, well, I can put my feet up now. And the younger generation can just run with it. Off you go.
Yeah.
We all still need to be involved. But knowing when to, even if it's just holding back the tide at the edges and letting people kind of go through, I think that's a valuable role as well.
Yeah. And this kind of leads as well, like future generations, like the question about like, how do you see like the gender pay gap or like financial independence for women and those kinds of, and gender equality in the workforce? How do you see those things kind of playing out more like even in like your experience and like like you said you did like the women's gender
Yeah.
studies major, like how have you seen things change and then how do you expect them to change more?
I expect there to be pushback because
Mm,
there's always been pushback.
yeah.
Um, the things that give me hope is that we are so much better connected than we ever were.
Yeah.
Um, I think we're so much, well, we're getting a lot better at embracing difference and talking to each other and admitting that we're wrong, not all the time, because
Yes.
admitting that you're wrong is sometimes incredibly painful. But creating space for dialogue, I think, has shifted. Certainly in the time that I've been since I did my master's and since I studied, I think we're just tired. And I think we're harnessing some of that tiredness and some of that anger in a good way. Going,
Yeah.
actually, we really have to sort this out
Yeah.
for ourselves and for other people and for generations, and looking at the fact that it impacts men as well.
Yeah.
And pulling in men when we can, to be better and be
Yeah.
supportive and to take an honest look at their companies, at their C-suite, like every level. Take a look at what's going on, who is represented, who is in the room, who's having the conversations and making the decisions, and is that true diversity? We are miles away, like years away from true diversity, but I think enough people are starting to really push and be loud that it's not good enough. And companies are stronger when people are treated fairly, when people are paid equally, when they look like the communities that they serve and that they work with. That gives me real hope. Real.
Yeah.
There was something really interesting on the radio that's saying optimism is the belief that things will just get better and we don't really have to do anything. But hope is the belief that things could get better, but we'll have to work for it. And I think I'm hopeful rather than optimistic. And I don't want that to be a negative. I am hopeful. Um, I'm hopeful.
Yeah. No, I really like that because I think, well, yeah, like the work does need to be done. Like we can't just stop. So it's like
Yeah.
hoping for that. I think that's really powerful. And you kind of mentioned like these like look at their C-suites and make sure people like look like the community they're like serving. And I think like my personal interest is in like politics and those kinds of things. And it's
Yeah.
like I like pay attention to like the gender makeup and all of those things. And it's like I think it is getting, but like objectively, it has gotten more representative. And you see some really cool things. Like I think it was like somewhere in Minnesota, I think it was the Minneapolis City Council that's like completely women, and like most of them are women of color. And it's like when you see things like that happen, it's like I think it is exciting. So I think it's like it's also important to like pay attention to the good things as well, so that it can keep you going. Yeah.
Yeah, you have to fill your cup with the good stuff. And I think maybe we're at some kind of a pinch point because there's been that pushback on on DEI.
Yeah.
There's a lot of pushback going on at the minute. But I think kind of the broader movement and women are just resilient and strong and resourceful. That gives me the hope to keep going.
Yeah. And I'm actually like glad you mentioned DEI, just because like I've heard a lot of the things in the past about like more like conservative people being like DEI is like didn't earn it. Like it's just like a push to get people there. Like what do you have to say to that? Because I have a lot of feelings, but like what do you see that as?
To me personally, it's a misrepresentation of what DEI means.
Yeah.
And the full spectrum of DEI. Some of it probably comes from fear.
Yeah.
The idea that something's going to be taken away from someone. And it's just incorrect.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because I mean you can tell from my accent I'm from the UK, so
yeah,
kind of looking at how the two conversations are slightly different but the same.
Okay. Yeah.
I think it's a complete misrepresentation. And it hurts all of us.
Yeah. And it's like, I think again, like people just don't get it because I remember reading a statistic at one point that's like women are likely to apply to a job if they believe they meet like all of the requirements. Men will apply when they only meet like 60%
Yeah.
and they'll still get hired. So it's like, I mean, obviously there's like a qualification, but those people are still considered unqualified or that they didn't earn the spot that they
Yeah.
got. And it's just sexism, obviously misogyny, but it's still like it's very disappointing when those things happen. So then like you have to pay attention to the other things and like just keep going, I guess.
Yeah. And that's one of the, I guess that's one of the places where being able to kind of tap in early with a person and being able to provide almost from the get-go kind of connections to people who can help support them,
Yeah.
confidence to weather some of those storms that are gonna come. Like you're not gonna get every job that you apply for, but how do you rebuild from that? How do you use the network around you? I think one of the great things that we've been able to offer from our employ her events is women who attend those can get 6 months of free support from a female mentor, and that's with whatever they want to do in their career, in their work life. It's not like formal coaching, but it's a woman who's further along in her career, who is right there alongside them, going, "What do you need? How can I help you navigate this? What support can I provide?" And I think things like that are so key because there are whole networks and spaces that we can be isolated from. And it just takes one person to go, "I'll stand next to you, I'll stand behind you, but I'll get you in there and I will help you with what you need." I think those one-on-one connections are really helpful in just kind of building women up.
Yeah. And like they become so important, especially if you're like in families where it's like you haven't kind of had that experience. Like I'm very privileged to have like a mom who's like worked and like been in like the tech
Yeah.
sectors where she is like she's experienced all of it. She's like seen the sexism. She's like been like seen the judgment and things. So it's like she can offer me that. But like that is a very like niche thing that a lot of people don't have. And it's amazing that like you are able to get access to it because it becomes so important because I don't think I would be like doing what I'm doing or even have the same goals or like known what I was doing if she hadn't told me.
Absolutely. And then I think we can build groups and pools from that. Kind of we women can create those spaces in the job that they go into and pull other people in. So you start building and building and building until hopefully you reach kind of critical mass and things, yeah, things are better and more supportive and more equal.
Yeah. And so tying it back to the organization, like how do people like contribute, whether it's like volunteering or like how do like members of the community who want to see like further action take that action?
So many ways. First of all, I should say we have two physical locations at Dress for Success. We call those our boutiques. We have one in Lawrenceville and one in Washington, PA.
Okay.
Those are open in the week. Women can make an appointment to go in and shop for clothing. They're great spaces and they're just fabulous. So we have two physical locations where people can volunteer, either kind of refreshing the displays, helping with stylings, helping with resume support, those kind of things. We also have the three mobile boutiques. And those serve Butler, Allegheny, Washington, Greene, and Fayette counties. And those are little wardrobes on wheels, kind of born out of the idea that outside of the city, public transportation is not good.
Yeah.
And time and access is an issue to clothing. If you've got an interview and you have caring responsibilities and you don't have access to a car or you share a car, it's really challenging. So we bring clothing into communities where that resource is lacking, and people can support those with financial donations of clothes, gently used, casual or professional clothing. Again, volunteering. Each mobile does about two like events a week. We're always
Yeah.
looking for volunteers to support on those. They're great fun out in the community, kind of really, really fun events. We also have an Amazon wish list. Our website is Dress for Success Pittsburgh. We always have an Amazon wish list of high need items as well.
Yeah.
So we provide personal care for the women that we serve as well. So things like full size body washes, hair care products, particularly black hair care products,
Yeah.
always in high demand, and we don't get like a high volume of donations of those.
Okay.
So there's a bunch of ways people looking to support us can get involved, and we're always looking for people. We have a warehouse. We graduated last year to actually having a full warehouse, which has been such a game changer. So we can bring clothing donations in and sort them into like seasons and styles and professional and casual. So if people are interested in sorting clothes and that's your jam, like we can find something for everyone.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. So I can think of like so many like organizations, even in my own school, that are like about supporting young girls and women. And it's like
Yeah.
that seems like an amazing endeavor for like that
Yeah,
exists in any school.
if organizations and corporations or anyone wants to do a specific donation drive, we can let people know what would be helpful. There are times of year we're looking for specific things. So yeah, reach out.
Yeah. And then I guess this would be like kind of finally, but like what piece of advice do you have for like any people like younger, like my age, high schoolers? Like what would you say to impact, like it doesn't have to be super deep, but anything like to the women, or like how should I phrase this? I guess how would you tell them to like uplift themselves and like the women around
Ah,
them and just become like better at doing that? Because I think there's also like this stereotype that it's like women are always like competing against each other and like out, and there's so many reasons behind that. But how would you say like we should uplift ourselves and build our own community?
that's such a mean question. You lulled me into a sense of security. Oh my goodness. I would. There's so much. I mean, oh. God, that's a really good question. I wish you'd put that on the list of questions you'd said.
Sorry.
Oh, no, that's fine. Yeah, I would just say this is something that I struggled with actually, is being open to other people. At various times in my life. I can be very shy. I can be quite reserved. Particularly when I moved to the US. I took a real step back with that. And I was part of an international women's group. And someone came up to me and said, I used to think that you thought you were better than all of us, but you're actually just, which was like, ouch. But you're just shy. You're just reserved. And I was like, yeah, I really don't think I'm better than anyone. Like on my darkest day, I really don't. But just being open to people, being curious, being, yeah, open to just talking to people and people being different, and just it can push you out of your comfort zone a little bit. But having a conversation, saying hello. I used to find networking events painful, um, but they're not that bad. Um, yeah, just push yourself that little bit to just be open to people. I think is because yeah, it may just like you might make somebody's day by noticing them and just having those little human interactions. It doesn't have to be super super deep, but just starting to make those connections with people, I think, is really really helpful. And people tend to be like nicer and friendlier and more trustworthy and more fabulous than you ever imagined, but you don't know if
Yeah.
if you're not open to connecting with them.
Yeah. No, I think that's actually really important. And it's like, it feels difficult in high school because it's like the petty drama and all of those
Yep.
things. But I think there's also like more spaces, I think nowadays for like specifically like younger girls to connect. Like our
Yeah.
school has like a couple clubs that we have one that's like girls advancing leadership, or like just like you get together, or even like we have like a women's studies class that's like you can take and like talk about these things. So I think it's become a little bit easier, but it's like still like hard in high school. But I think that's a step that we all need to take.
And
Yeah.
I would say the context is very different as well. Seems to be in a lot of high schools in the US an awful lot available to people, a lot more than in the UK. And that's not necessarily like it's just you can't compare the two. But there seems to be an awful lot available. I'm like, oh wow, I didn't have that in the
Yeah.
UK. So there are things out there. I mean, I worry sometimes about the balance of young women's time
Yeah.
as well, like keeping on the flip side of that, keeping some time for yourself and your own kind of peace I think is really helpful. But yeah, just being more, if I could go back and just have been a little bit more open and a little bit less reserved, I think I would have, yeah.
Yes, absolutely. But Harriet, thank you so much for joining us and having this conversation with me. And to all the listeners out there, thank you so much for listening. And we hope you come back soon for the next episode of Women Power Pittsburgh. Until next time.